Hey everybody, in the month of June we've started talking about connection, and we first talked about the fact that we were all excited to get out and about and reconnect with people and have coffees and suppers and dinners and walks in the park. Then last week we talked about connecting to our own souls and some of how our past gets in the way of that. So I want us to continue the conversation about connecting with our souls and take it in a different direction today. One of the things I feel like we miss in adulthood is how creativity connects us to our souls. And so I'm going to read a definition of creativity because I think we get confused between creativity and artistry, and I think those are completely different things. But creativity is the ability to transcend traditional ideas, rules, patterns, and create meaningful new ideas, forms, methods, interpretations. Creativity, the ability to transcend traditional ideas, rules, patterns, and create meaningful new ideas, forms, methods, and interpretations. So if you've been around children lately, you notice how creative they are. They are incredibly creative. They just pick up anything close to them and they begin to pretend with it. They have these incredible imaginations, active imaginations. Albert Einstein said, "Imagination is everything." It is the preview of life's coming attractions. So children have this organic play where they just enjoy themselves and just let their imaginations run wild. My kids, when they were little, played outside a lot, and they would build entire villages. Just pick up what's in the yard and build a village out of it. Who does that? You have to have imagination to go there. We lived on the creek one summer, and they spent the entire summer in the creek, and the thing they did every day was build castles. Castles for the fish. They took the rocks in the creek and rearranged them every day, made arches and what they called castles for the fish. We have to have some imagination to decide that the fish need a home and that it needs to be a castle and that you're going to pick up the rock and build an arch. So somehow in adulthood, our imagination gets stifled, right? And therefore our creativity. We just don't operate from this place of imagination and creativity. So how do we get that back? What does it look like to get that back? I think obviously we unless we're playing with children, we don't go build villages in the yard or castles in the creek. But playing with children, that's a great way to get your imagination, creativity back. But what we do is we play with ideas, right? Now, our artist friends play with actual forms of art, whether that's writing, creating music, painting. But the rest of us, we play with ideas. So how do we invite that imagination, that playfulness, that fun back into ideas that we're wrestling with on a daily basis? We have this tendency to be stifled because we don't want to make a mistake, right? We don't want it to be flawed. But we have to get past that and just invite the creativity and the imagination in. When we create, we actually act as a catalyst for changing the world, because the definition, transcend the traditional ideas, rules, patterns, bring something new in. So this is something we have to learn how to invite back into our lives, especially if we want to connect with our souls. How do we do it? Well, if it's about ideas, if indeed we are trying to be playful and creative and imaginative with ideas, one way is to just get curious. Ask lots of curious questions in all kinds of settings, in all kinds of ways. I remember driving my dad crazy when I was a kid because I asked all the questions. What if we asked some curious questions even in the middle of a conversation with someone that was presenting ideas we didn't like, or thought patterns that we didn't agree with, or belief systems that we absolutely were opposed to? What if we got curious and just began to ask questions in the middle of all that, played with ideas? What if when we believe there's no solution, oh man, this is never going to work, I can't make this happen. What if in that moment when we believe there was no solution, we actually tapped into our imagination and said, okay, let's just assume there is a solution. I'm going to write 12 ideas down, 12 possibilities. Make them outlandish and crazy. But tap into that playful, creative side of us, because it opens up a whole new world and it gets us connected to ourselves in a totally different place. Or if we just started looking for new things? We have these routines, these rituals, these patterns that we get stuck in. What if we just started looking for something new on our walk, on our drive, in our office? What if we said, what have I not seen in a certain way before? I walk in my neighborhood all the time, but I tend to walk the same direction. When I turn around and walk the other direction, everything looks different. What is something I haven't really seen on this routine that I'm in the middle of? I recently did a nature scavenger hunt with a 10-year-old. However, we didn't live in the same state, so we did it a little differently. We had the same list, and we went out at the same time, but in totally different states, and took pictures of the things that we were finding on our nature scavenger hunt and sent them to each other. Well, as I mentioned, I walk all the time, but with this in mind, when I was looking for something prickly and something fuzzy and something green, I was looking at things through a different angle. I was tapping into that imagination and creativity. Well, one of the reasons we don't cultivate creativity is because it's risky. Because being creative is a vulnerable act. Our artist friends, when they create music, when they create a painting, when they write a novel, and they hand it to someone for the first time, that's very vulnerable to have someone review their artistic creation. Well, that's the same thing that happens to us with ideas. When we get creative with our ideas, we feel very vulnerable. It feels like a risk right in the middle of a meeting to move away from the traditional ideas, rules, or patterns and start bringing in some new ideas, some new methods, some new forms. So we choose not to, and we don't get connected to the very essence of our core. So I'm challenging us this week to get creative. Use your imagination, whatever it looks like. Do something silly, get with kids if that's better. Try something new. Begin to cultivate that creativity, because it's going to nourish our soul. It's going to reconnect us to ourselves. And there is a divine spark that comes from creating. I'm Michelle Gooch with Life by Design. Get out there this week and get creative. If you want to connect with me because you're looking for someone to partner with to help move you from a place of second guessing to where you want to be, you can find me at lifebydesign.guru. www.lifebydesign.guru. I'll see you next week.